Barbara, you said that on the 23rd. Why was it here?
The elementary configuration. We are going to do the pledge, so please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. If you were not on live stream last night or were not here last night, there are a few people that have come back and repeat offenders. We're actually doing the same presentation at all of the subcommittee meetings for this week and the beginning of next week. We did do an announcement that will be coming out tomorrow. It'll be on the website. The start time committee will be meeting on January 23rd at 7 p.m. here. So we had to reschedule that one from December. So we're going to go through the presentation. If you didn't have a chance to pick one up, it's over here on the table and the agenda. There is a typo on the agenda. It is for the second bullet. It should say 6th grade to MS, not HS. It's to we're not sending the 6th graders to the high school. We're sending them to the middle school with that plan. So we're going to take you through what we think has been the options that we have tried to come up with. There are probably infinitesimal number of other options available, but we're going to show these 4 as the possibilities for the survey that we're going to do. And then again, we'll explain how the survey will work. So I'm going to go through the agenda quickly. If there's any questions we'll take those at the end after we talk about the options and the agenda. So option A is keeping our current configuration, just as is, no changes, same number of schools, same configurations, no variations whatsoever. As we've pointed out in the past, there is an issue with sustainability of the elementary levels if enrollment continues to decline. So if not in 2 years, at some point in the future, if enrollment doesn't go up at any point, we may have to consider a repurposing of an elementary school. Don't want to say closure. Repurposing would be a much better option, just in case we need to reopen it at some other point. From last night's meeting, some folks made some suggestions on adding some items underneath the costs, so we are going to be doing that. And this slide that you see here will be up on the district website under the Strategic Planning Committee probably by the end of the week at the earliest. So we did put in here just one area of cost that we had mentioned in some of our previous presentations, that minimally the costs for our accelerated math program, those are the kids from junior high schools that take upper level math courses at the high school and then are transported back over to the 2 junior high schools. The E&L program, IG, special education and JV sports, minimally costing us about $3.1 million in transportation. That is what we currently are experiencing. All right, so one piece of major research we did, we took all of the school districts on Long Island, we got the report on the state website, and what their configurations are. And we're going to post this whole list so everyone can see on our website what all the different configurations are, all the districts on Long Island. So when you look at our configuration, there are no school districts on Long Island with our configuration, not one. There are variations of different degrees. Some have 2 grade levels in the junior high school or middle school. Some have middle school with two grade levels, or there are different configurations in elementary. And under each of these categories, we're actually showing you which districts have those configurations on Long Island. There are districts in the state, about 5 of them, that have our configuration, but they're upstate. And if you're from Long Island, anything north of Long Island is considered upstate. So that's our current situation. Option B is moving the 9th grade to the high school, moving the 6th grade to the junior high schools, which would then become middle schools, and maintaining 5P through 5 elementary schools. Our elementary schools really are pre-K through 5 now. So maintaining all 5 of them, that configuration. So we had all these top parts of the evaluation were done in all the presentations we had in the prior meetings. In this particular category, the cost savings come from the transportation savings for the 9th grade going to the high school. Again, you don't have the accelerated math or the JV sports, so that's a savings there. That will help alleviate some of the costs for this one. Again, there's also potential cost savings here. With 6th grade going over, we currently have about 21 teachers in the 4th grade. This was done in the 24-25 school year. 21 teachers in the 4th grade. We would only need 16, and that would be doing a house plan in that model. So that would save us approximately $500,000 in that range. About $60,000 in salary, about $40,000 in benefits. The list you see underneath that of the comparable districts, these are all the districts that have that configuration. There's 3 columns of districts there. And just to point out a few, you have on there Great Neck, you have Hollow Hills, Hauppauge, Herricks, Jericho, Lynbrook, Plain Edge, Port Washington, so just to name a few, Roslyn, Smithtown, Syosset, those are all districts that have that configuration present. Option C is just move the 9th grade to the high school and maintain 5P through 6 elementary schools, basically our current elementary configuration. As we pointed out in one of the presentations, and we, again, from recommendations in last night's meeting, we will put under here, we already did it on the one we have on the system, we will put under here what that means for the middle school, junior high schools. You're basically going to have 2 junior high schools with the combined between the 2 only 800 students in 7th and 8th grade. So that's a consideration. What do you do then? Do you move all of them over to one junior high school versus the other junior high school? So that's just an option there. You could repurpose a junior high school in that configuration and hence have some cost savings as well. Again, cost savings here fall under JV sports and accelerated math with the 9th grade going up. So this configuration, there are only 3 school districts in all of Long Island with that configuration. Central Islip, Oceanside, and Roosevelt. That's it. So that's going through all the 120 some odd school districts on Long Island just to show what's available. Last option, option D, is going to the Princeton plan, which would be 2 intermediate schools, 2 primary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school. The 2 primary would be P through 2, the 2 intermediate would be 3 through 5, the middle schools would be 6 through 8, and the high school would be 9 through 12. By far, this would save us the most money, if we're looking at costs. About $2 million in transportation would cost to do this plan first. There would be some offsetting costs to that with the number of minibuses. We wouldn't need as many minibuses, so that $2 million might drop down to just above $1 million. But we would save overall in staffing in the district from the grade levels being combined into 2 schools in each of the levels, about 17 teaching positions, which is approximately $1.7 million. That's in addition to, which we'll put this bullet here under there as well, because it does go under both. That's in addition to the cost savings that would occur with not doing the transportation for those programs that we underlined on option A. So overall, it's about $4.9 billion in savings there. Again, what we did was list out each of the districts that have that configuration. So just to point out a few here, Bayshore, Comac, Deer Park, Glen Cove, Harbor Fields, Hewlett, Huntington, Kings Park, Locust Valley, Miller Place, all the South Country, South Huntington, all have those, that configuration, the Princeton Black configuration. They may not necessarily call it that, but if you look at the chart when we have it up there, you'll see that that configuration matches what we have here. So those are the 4 options we're considering putting out for the survey. Our intention is to put the survey out by the end of the month, get it out to the entire community. We're going to actually disaggregate the data based upon sending it to parents, sending it to staff, and sending it to students. So the survey group is going to meet next week. We work with a company called Qualtrics, which helps us break down the data coming in and put it into different categories. We'll give the statistics both to the board and to the community showing which of these options the parents seem to favor, the students seem to favor, and staff seems to favor. So just putting it out there. It's not a vote, it's just showing where the opinions are falling from all those different groups. One of the things we're trying to do with this survey is sort of like when you get a survey and they make you read everything first before you can answer, so that no one speeds through and just answers all the questions, is put the attachments of the different presentations we have, that you have to read those first before you just simply answer, I like this one, don't bother reading anything else. So we're just trying to work out the detail of that with this. There was a tendency just to skip over all that stuff and just skip to whatever you think is the answer you like the most. So that survey would go out, we'd give a week turnaround time to get it back, and then we can analyze the data and then have that data distributed out to the community and to the Board of Education to make some determination, hopefully by the end of February, at the latest beginning of March. That's the goal. So just as time as the budget season's kicking in, to have this out there as the data and the results from the survey. The written report will be coming from the governing committee to the board on the 25th. The governing committee's meeting on the 17th. And we'll construct a report for the following week to give to the Board of Education. So that's basically where we're at right now. We're looking to try to move this along so at least we can see where the community is falling. And in all honesty, if the community falls into the area of we favor our current configuration, so be it. We just need to be prepared for the future of what that could look like. We may have to revisit this in a couple of years if enrollment doesn't increase. So it's just an option out there. As much as people have had a lot of angst over this, it's best we have these conversations. There's a lot of stuff floating out there on social media, even about stuff that hasn't even been covered yet, like the budget for next year. There isn't any budget determinations just yet because we have just started the budgetary process. So we're still looking at a lot of things. So there's a lot of, unfortunately, misinformation based on little to no fact. Please make sure you look at the district's website and the information that's being shared, because as much as we've tried this year especially, we're trying to be very transparent. If you have questions or concerns, I've had emails, as many as hundreds in some weeks, and phone calls. Please reach out to one of us. The chair people are available as well to answer questions. We'd be happy to sit with anyone who has anything. I've met with different smaller groups. Not a problem whatsoever. We want the community to be informed and know what the options are. That's all. We're not looking to do something secretive or clandestine. There's no intention of any of that. And whatever the opinions that are shared on this survey, the board will certainly take into consideration. Mr. Kerman is our chairman, as a representative of the board, will tell you, we certainly be looking at what the community's opinions are on each of these topics. So what we're going to do now, after the survey piece we just explained, we're going to flip on the microphones, and we'll be happy to take questions from any of you in the audience. There were some suggestions, well, let's throw out some more options on there. We can't do a survey with 50 different options. It's just not going to work. We're never going to get enough people to really respond positively. There's a lot of opinions on this. These are the ones that we felt were the best, given our situation presently and some of the feedback we were receiving. There's a lot of emotion tied to each one of these. We certainly get that piece. There's a lot of considerations. When we talk about cutting of staff, we're talking about people. We're not talking about widgets. We're talking about people. And we want to make sure that our class sizes remain perfect for our students to be able to get a quality education in this district. So that's absolutely under our consideration when we move forward with this. So if anyone has a statement or a question, please approach any of the mics and we'll go from there.
Dr. Scanlon, Dr. Dabrowski, Dr. Kerman, thank you for having us again. So I've been coming to these meetings, I've been watching them online. I don't want to get too close, it's really loud. The one thing I struggle with is, so enrollment's going down. You mentioned in one of the meetings that I've been to that all the houses are now becoming rentals. I know the first meeting we had to one of the parents asked, if all the houses become rentals, they're still paying the same tax. So we're still getting the same money coming in. So if students are going down, I mean, my math might be wrong if I was if I was good at math, I wouldn't be a civil servant, I wouldn't be a cop, I'd be making more money. But, you keep giving the same amount of money, actually more, because the budget passed, it keeps going up, and enrollment's going down. How do we not have an excess of money now to spend on less students in regards, because even the rental, we're still getting the same taxes. So I just don't know, I know there's a hiccup there, I don't understand.
And we will certainly cover a lot of that during the budget advisory committee process and the budget process as you report. So the tax cap that came out limits the amount of money the district can raise. In your own home, all prices are going up. Even if there are less kids, it doesn't mean that the expenses haven't changed as far as the major areas. We still have to do the lights and the heat and everything in the schools. And you still have to pay the salaries. Now, as I mentioned in some of the previous presentations, 55% of our teaching staff, which is our largest group of staff in the district, 75% of our budget is made up of staff in the school district, paying for all the different personnel. And there's approximately 1,400 full-time personnel, Dr. Dabrowski, and about 600 part-time staff and subs and things of that nature. So all those contracts all go up each year, because there's increases in each of those contracts. So those expenses go up. So when your 75% of your budget is tied to those contracts and those salaries going up, that has to be covered. We do get some state aid, however, we are a high wealth district, so our amount of state aid comparatively to some other districts is a lot less. So that increases. Everyone in this room, if you've tried to go to Home Depot and buy a 2x4, knows that inflation is up. So those expenses for a school district are there as well. So fuel costs, when we're talking about these savings for transportation, these are based on this year's numbers. So that's where we talked about the large buses being about $110,000 and the mini buses being about $94,000, $95,000 a piece. However, those expenses are going to go up. And in transportation alone, the state has ruled that by 2035, those buses have to be all electric. So the bus companies aren't just going to buy those out of their own pocket. They're going to pass those costs along to us. So that's where it's a finite amount of money. If you went to a 2% tax cap, not that it is 2%, it's a formula that Mr. Carlson can explain. You need like a slide rule to figure out all the different pieces of what it will actually be. That number could fluctuate. So if it is 2%, that's about $3.3 million next year. However, we just got even our health cost benefits for next year, how much that's going to go up across the district. It's going up to $2.5 million. But 3.3 million, 2.5, that's got to go to increasing health costs. So that's everywhere. Any business, any corporation, that's the same thing, so that we say.
I guess my second question would be, I know we talk about making all these changes, but have we looked at the impact? I think you said 75 superintendents live in the district.
Superintendents, assistant superintendents,
right.
And that was an old stat that's about 3 years old right
so
now.
Roughly, yeah. So we have so many people from outside districts coming to live in Three Village, and they want their kids to go to the school. I just feel like, I'm speaking for myself, right? So I do like what we're doing here. I do like weighing the options. I spoke to you. I like that. I told people we're just trying to prepare. But I feel like the reason people come to the district is because of the layout. And because we're different than other districts, and because we have a whole... Exactly. I feel like, I've been in this district my whole life, and when I was looking for houses, I looked at other school districts, I was like, I'm going to stay in Three Village. I'd rather live in a box on the corner and pay high taxes than live in a nice house and live in a different school district. But have we looked at what are the unintended consequences of changing the outlook of the district? Are people not going to want to come to Three Village now because they're like, well, they do that over in Sachem, or they do it in Smithtown. And now are people going to be like, well, I'm paying all this money in taxes, I'm the same district as the other, we have the same layout as these other districts, why don't we just move to a cheaper district, and have the same, in people's, it's the same layout.
So the only thing I would say is the quality of education. I'm not being critical of any other district, because the Lord knows there are people that...
Oh, no, we can.
So I don't want to do that. Someone will probably be out there taping this and saying, hey, you said this against that district. I feel we do a great job in this district with the quality of education that we have, across the board, for every type of learner we have. from if you're the highest ability learners to the lowest ability learners, whatever it might be. If you have a student with special needs, this is a district you want to be in, because of the number of services we provide and the programs we have. And we have to think about, and if you're a child that has high ability, the number of AP courses we offer, the IG program we have, those things are there. And my consideration is too, we have a lot of students that are in the middle, and we have to be concerned about them and giving them opportunities. So when, you were a student here years ago, so back when you were a student here, there was 8 business teachers at our high school. We're down to 3. And when I came here, we had 1. So now we're up to 3. That program needs to expand, give opportunities to kids to learn about business before they go off and spend $75,000 a year on their parents' money to figure out that they don't like business courses. And there are CTE, career and technical education programs that we could be offering here that we've already started doing. We have a marketing class that's a CTE course, and starting next year we have an early childhood education program course that'll be our students will actually doing their internships in our pre-K program. So, it's like a self-contained type of program to have our kids be able to do that. So, years ago, the majority of these districts you see here on the bottom, they were configured just like us. So, in the 50s and 60s, the elementary program set up, as we are set up, was the way to go. And the junior high school was the way to go. A lot of districts were configured that. Over the course of time, they changed over. Whatever the factors, if you talk to each individual district, there can be a whole host of factors why they did that, most of which was financial. Now, as we said in some of those presentations, it's the way our standards are being written more than the financial factor. Our standards from the state are coming down, P through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. So we make up for the difference in 6th grade education in this district because we teach our 6th grade students according to those standards, but use middle school materials with elementary teachers certified in those areas. And that is why you're seeing this year the departmentalization piece that we're doing with those intermediate grade levels. We're experimenting with that. So that we're trying to create experts in those fields, science, math, English, and social studies, because their counterparts in other districts are receiving that type of education. So, we say 75% of the districts are configured in a middle school model in the state, that is factual. Whether we should go to that, that's the opinion of this community. And that's why we say, we want to hear it. If this is what you want to do, great. Then vote for this, or I hate to say the word for it, when you get the survey, favor this category. Then we'll know that you want to do that. Just be aware that in 2 to 3 years, I may be back here standing in front of a group of people saying, okay, if enrollment doesn't go up, we got to talk about how many schools we have. And I was hoping that we would avoid having some of those changes happen for at least 2 years. But I'll tell you right now, with elementary configurations, next year we're actually going to feel in 2 grade levels, classes going to 2 sections. We just can't financially support 3 teachers when we have a number of students in the grade level that are smaller. So, and that's low 50s and less. So we also have to be very careful that our ratios of special needs students in some of those courses are appropriate, that they don't exceed 50% because they become special education classes. So with all those things are mitigating factors here. And when you were here as a student, there was a time when we had 6 to 8 sections of classes in those grade levels. The most we have right now is 5 in any particular school, as low as 3. But next year it's going to be 2 to 4,
Right.
Just because we're set up.
So I know you said you don't want to close. I'm sorry if I'm talking, but I can go all night if you guys want me to. Hit the buzzer if you want me to sit down. When you talk about closing an elementary school, we all talk about we don't want that to happen. But what's the cost savings if we do close it, and how does it? I know we don't want to do it because if we have to open it, it's going to cost a lot more.
Right.
But if we have to close one, how much money would that save that we could keep the current configuration going down to 4 elementary schools, or
Right,
5,
so
right? Down to 4.
those students in that particular school would have to go to another school or
Right.
schools.
Mhm.
At that point, the board would have to make a determination whether or not they want to reconfigure the whole district or just that particular school.
But is there like do we have like a number, like a money value on
It
how much?
depends on which school you close,
Right.
how big it is or how small it is. You save on the administrative costs. You won't have a principal or assistant principal to pay. But the overall staffing, teaching staff, you may need some of those teachers to go to the other schools to set up, have the additional sections in the other schools for the population switching over. You still have to keep the building, whether it's in a mothball situation, operational. You still have to do some lights, you still have to do heat. Anyone in the past 2 weeks, if you had a heat problem in your house, with burst pipes, you don't want that happening in a school. So we need to keep the heat running in the school. We don't have to run air conditioning, obviously, but we have to keep it, so just to keep it operational. That's why we said, don't close it, repurpose it. Because if you did something else, for instance, as we mentioned, expanding our academy and the School for the Arts. The academy expanding with 20 students at the current rate of non-resident tuition rate is $88,000. So that would bring in approximately $1.7 million in funds for us to have that revenue coming in. The other piece, if you did an arts program, let's say you had 50 to 100 students, in addition to 200 or more of our own students that are in that type of program, could also generate funds. That's a different rate, that's a general education rate. Again, the school districts don't set that rate, the state sets that rate. The current rate for a general education student for our district is about $20,000. So if you figure another 100 students, you have about $2 million there that would come in. So that's revenue that comes into the district. It's stuff that we don't have currently. The academy running right now only has 9 students out of district at $88,000. So you almost double that amount of money coming in. So, and then if enrollment switches at any point in the next 5 to 10 years, that building is readily available for students to go back in. You would just have to hire the principal, and the assistant principal, and the clerical staff, whatever you need for that building.
Do you know what it takes to make it like an art school? I mean, like, I don't know anything about the art school. I don't know what SIAS is the only one that has it. I feel like that would be a good, I mean, I hate to say money grant.
Yes, and there
To help
actually
us offset our costs.
right, there are actually grants available for doing that type of program too. So we've been very lucky that we have some politicians in our community who are very much behind our educational programs. Regent Tillis, who is our regent for our areas, he's very much in favor of the arts programs as well. So we'll be seeking out some assistance for opening that. So whatever it would cost us, it will be offset. But it would probably not mean us having to expand the number of teachers we have in our current arts programs. And when I say arts, I mean art, music, and theater arts. So we actually could do theater arts programs, just the way the School for the Arts is doing in SIAS at the current time. And there is no School for the Arts in Suffolk County at all.
Right. I got one more. No, I mean, so my last one, I swear, unless I come up with something as we're talking. I know in the chart it says, where does it say, that the 6th graders aren't getting the same educational value, or something, or not receiving the same benefit as middle school. Is there a way, are you guys able to judge how our 6th graders are doing compared to 6th graders in other schools that are putting them in middle school? Everything's comparing, like we want to make, I don't want to change it to the same, but.
Yes, same kind of question came up last night. The only statewide way we would be able to do that is with state assessment testing. Unfortunately, there's the opt-out movement that we're trying to encourage people to swing back away from, because now it is hurting us, because we are seeing some students not having the test stamina on test as high as the seniors in high school, not being able to sit for a 3-hour Regents exam, getting students back in the swing of taking tests and sitting for long durations of time. That data that comes from those state assessments would be a way to compare, but any data that you're looking at right now, the state even qualifies it on the state education website and school report card, that it is, with the opt-out movement, if we only had at the most in any particular grade level, 60% of our students taking the test. Other districts are in a similar position. So it is not as bad upstate as it is on Long Island, but that would be a way to do it. Unless we all took some form of a national test. Most of our students take SATs and ACTs and things of that nature. We can see comparative data that way, but just specifically for the 6th grade, the only way to do that would be to have that state assessment data. Not everyone does our universal screenings that we do. They don't use iReady and don't use Ames, but they use something else, but there is no ability to compare that in some type of database statewide.
Right. But like, so now the opt-out will be like, oh, 60%, if every district is having that same threshold, can't you compare like that numbers or is that like,
And it fluctuates from district to district.
like if
Some
60
days
to 60 and we're 60, can't we compare our numbers? At least our
If
60% are doing.
if they were 60% of the district, yes, you could, but you have to drill into that data to get that
Oh, right,
information.
to make sure.
So, yeah, because the state doesn't say, well, by the way, only 60% of the students took it.
Right.
You have to drill in and find that information. So, there are some districts that are as low as 25% or less taking it. I used this statistic last night, a few years ago, City of Rochester, New York State, state assessment, only 4% of the kids passed the state assessment. 4% total in the whole city. That's a tremendous bad number, yes, when you look at that. So, and it's sad because those students don't have the same opportunities that they would in a district like 3 Village. If you have any
I
statements,
don't think I have anything else,
please
so,
go ahead.
yeah. I'll probably come up with something later.
That's okay. Well,
Hello. Is that on? Okay, so I do have a response to something you said of your first question. I'm actually brand new to the district, like I was a COVID evacuee from Brooklyn, and I will say that I definitely chose the district for the quality of the education. I actually find the current configuration very different from what I'm used to. So that had, for me, had zero, I had no impact on that. I was like, oh, okay, that's a choice, and I'll leave it at that. But the quality of, and I know that a bunch of us new people have found each other, and we definitely came here for the quality, which obviously is not changing because the quality is the quality.
That's what we count, that's what I was gonna ask, like, do we have that? I
No,
don't know many people from outside districts or outside
yeah,
who come in and are like, oh, I came here for this, like, it's,
No, I
that's
was
the thing
here-
that I wanna hear to make sure.
my guy is in first grade now. I came here specifically so he could start kindergarten because I was so afraid of, because of Brooklyn, because the cluster was so bad, he didn't physically go to pre-K or pre-K. So I was like, this kid needs to be in a building in kindergarten. So we moved in like the spring to make that happen. And I will say my realtor, who is born and raised from this district, he completely advocated for, I was being, started in Huntington, then we were in North Point, then we were Smithtown, then we were St. James. We were very close to St. James, and he really pulled me away from them. He's like, if you're willing to go as far as St. James, go one more over, this district is incredible. So he definitely influenced us that way, but it had nothing to do with the junior high or the high school configuration. So I do suggest this.
No, thank you.
I was curious about these comparative districts, and I know you don't want to say anything negative, but are there any positive standouts on like one district that we could say, oh, this district is really great, really, I mean, is that possible, or those?
well, in the state, Jericho and Great Neck are considered number 1 and number 2.
Okay.
When you're looking at data from the state education department, and just some. But again, that's just what and you have to break that data down by categories and grade levels. Yes.
Okay, and then I know that, my last thing, is I know that we don't wanna have options E, F, whatever, but I do notice that for option A and option B, is there data that shows if they were to close one of the schools, the elementary schools, the cost savings, like?
That was Adam's previous question. It would be the administrative savings costs.
Okay,
You would still have to operate the building, just,
so
physical
those savings would
plant.
be the same whether it was A or B?
Wouldn't make any difference, yes, under each of those categories, absolutely.
Because I do know that like the people that I've been talking to, like, I know a lot of people are like in between those two options. And just with obviously closing the fourth school, but that would be the same no matter what.
Right, and just so we are clear, even with the administration, we operate an APPR, it's the annual professional performance review cycle. So we still have to do the same number of observations of the people that are in staff here. So that has to be done by administrators, it can't be done by another teacher, it has to be done by administrators. So if there are still more teachers in another building, we might have to keep even like an AP on, may have 2 APs in an elementary school as opposed to 1. It may not mean that we lose just the whole administration of that building.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions or statements? Come on up to the mic.
Is it all right if we work our way through the options?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right, so when the negatives for option A, it says less sections per grade all the way at the bottom. does that mean smaller class sizes? Or larger class sizes?
No, it doesn't mean either larger or smaller, it just means that as the population goes down, for instance, if we have, a class grade level with 88 in it right now, typically that's between 4 to 5 teachers in that grade level in this district. If it's the low 50s and below, we're really looking at only 2 teachers in that grade level. So we're trying to make them, we work on district averages of class size, so yes, you could have disparities among 5 elementary schools. We have that already, where the average class size in one building is 18 and the comparable grade level in another building is 22, just because there's more kids in that grade level in that school. So that exists right now. So the more schools you have, the greater that's going to happen, unless the populations are evenly distributed across all of the buildings.
Okay. And then right under that, it says limit parent and student choice. What does that mean?
Yes, so for instance, parents, we don't allow parents to say, oh, I want that teacher, but you would say, oh, my child has this need, this need, but there's only 2 teachers in the grade level, so it's either teacher A or teacher B. So as far as parent choice or student choice, your options are going to get less and less with those only having 2 teachers in a particular grade level in the school. That's what we mean by that.
Okay. I'm just saying, because it's so broad and vague, where it looks like everyone's missing out on all these great choices. Is there any way we can be more specific on that? Because, the connotation of it is different than what you just explained there. I think when someone who doesn't have to explain it should read it.
And that's where the presentations that we did at each of these meetings go into far more depth than that, just what we put on this particular chart. In particular, like the last 6th grade meeting we had, not yesterday's meeting, the meeting before, Ms. Keene helped do her artwork on that and all the data with Ms. Pimentel. That whole presentation goes into a lot more detail about what that looks like.
Okay.
And just so you know, one of the things, even if we stay in our current configuration, we mentioned several times about house plans. If you're not familiar with those, we explained those a little bit. That's where we cluster the students with a group of teachers, usually 4 teachers, math, science, English, and social studies. We could even do that even if we stayed in our current configuration. So I don't want that to be like, we can only get a house plan if we do this option as opposed to that. No, we could do that option in any of these plans, absolutely. And for, talking about social and emotional development with students, that plan that existed here for a long time, it was well over 20 years, really was a wonderful way for students to transition over. Remember, if we did any of these changes, we would be talking about 2 grade levels transitioning to the junior high schools or middle schools at that point, and 2 transitioning over to the high school at that point. We want to make sure that we have those supports in place for any of the students as they move into those programs. That's why we're not going to be able to snap our fingers and do this next year. We need at least a year, if not more, to get that transition going.
And then, so when the parents who give them the survey, will they see this in front of them and then click? Okay, but so that's what I mean, this presentation that we give them is really important, because something that is vague and ambiguous.
Right, but this isn't going to be the only thing they will see. That's what I was saying earlier in the meeting. We're going to give the parents those presentations that we've been doing at the meetings. We're going to have them do that. We're just trying to figure out how we make them read that before they vote on that.
Okay.
So that's the only thing we're trying to figure out at this point in time.
That actually answers my next question, is that,
Sure.
so I read a lot of the research that was presented, and I also went on the website for Superintendents Association of America. I looked at studies in Houston, in California, and social emotional learning and student motivation. All what was presented and what I read, and if you guys have something different, supported keeping 6th grade in the elementary school. And the fact that that's not on here, when that is directly related.
That's the subject right here. It's keeping 6th grade. This is 5P through 6 schools.
I understand
Our
that,
current
but the
configuration.
fact that it's not a bullet, all these things are positives and
Yeah,
negatives.
there are actually multiple studies out there. The Duke study that's out there that argues both sides of that 6th grade being benefit. So we just don't have the room to put every single study on here and say, this is what this study said. That's why we have it up on the website. And again, when putting this out to the community, we could certainly reference any of those studies for them to read in that information.
Okay,
So-
if I could just finish, is there any way to bullet the key points in the conclusions? Because I know you're saying we're gonna put all the studies, but as we have multiple kids, right? And the fact that there's only 30 people here tonight,
And we're live streaming.
fine. But you get what I'm saying, right? This is a very important decision. The fact that we're not putting it on as bullets, tells me that it's not important. Because it's, hey, listen, you go read this, and we're not gonna bullet it. That's just my opinion, but looking at it, these are important positives and negatives that you can, by situating kids differently. And we, like, you guys are educators, and I know you guys are administrators, social emotional learning in New York City is the key. It's directly connected to student achievement.
Agreed.
To me, I'm looking at it like that's one of the more important things. And by not being on there, you're like, and saying, well, you could just read it on your own time on one of these PowerPoints. I'm not saying you, I'm just saying, could we bullet it with the conclusions? Could it be short so that people with families can then like scan it just like it is here?
We can certainly try to do that, that's not a problem.
I'll do it, I have no problem.
The only issue with even some of those studies, like even the Duke studies I was mentioning, which is one of the most comprehensive studies that has been done, it doesn't say this is better than that. It actually says, here's the positives of this one, here's the positives of this one, that's all. Yeah, that's all it says. So we can certainly put that in, but it doesn't say, you know, this plan is better than that plan at all, so.
But like that information, the fact that that has positives and negatives, that would fit right in with how this is presented to the public.
Sure, absolutely.
And then, just out of curiosity, is this the first option for cost saving?
As far as the budget are you talking about?
Yeah,
or-
because like this is, it's clear to me that like the cost saving is one of the key elements of this, right? We have that, it's mentioned in everything.
Right. It's actually not so much even the cost savings. What's really been driving this is our elementary declining enrollment. That's really the driving piece.
Okay.
The cost savings, we just put it in there because when we were doing these presentations over the past 2 months or 3 months, that's what came up from a lot of the community members. They want to see, well, what does that mean financially for everyone? And so that we were just trying to connect with that.
Okay, so if we're trying to meet the budget of all the budgetary needs, is it like we're doing this first so that we have a secure budget for the following years?
As I said, this is not something we will be doing for next year per se. We're not looking to do any of this with 2024-25. The issue that why this year was being driven is enrollment was going down. So 10 years ago, we went 7,400 students, we're down to 5,500 now. So that was what really was driving it. And as I said, we had grade levels with 7 to 8 teachers in it, we're down to 3 to 5. So at some point, and this district at one point had over 10,000 students in it. We had 2 more elementary schools. And over the course of time, we closed Christian Avenue and sold that off. We closed North Country and it became the administration building. So we have been periodically going through this. And we're not alone, unfortunately. Some of these same districts that you're seeing here on both of these lists over here are dealing with declining enrollment as well.
Okay. And then just the last one, the third bullet of the cost savings is accelerated math, E&L, IG, special ed, et cetera. When you go to the high school, the accelerated math and JV sports will then be at the proper high school that they'll be in, correct? So is that the $670,000?
That's this, yes. Yeah. And we just based upon last night's information, we broke that out a little bit better so people can see where's that number coming from. So
Okay.
it's not on this one yet, but it will be when we get it up.
Gotcha, that was my next question. Okay. And, yeah, that's it. Okay, thank you, man.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
your time.
Thank you.
I just want to address the first 2 speakers about the format and how it affects outcomes here. When we first started doing this, I was actually really interested in K8. That's what Laurel Hill has. It seemed like a good option because there's no transitions. It seems to be the transitions where everything goes wrong. There actually are studies on K8. It doesn't make any difference at all. It turns out that the format of the schools, the elementary schools, is really not all that important. The thing that matters with the transitions is whether the student is going from a school where they feel comfortable to a school where they feel less comfortable. Obviously that is a negative outcome, right? So you have to make all the schools equally comfortable, and that gets increasingly difficult, particularly for middle school, right? But they're still going to have to make that transition from K8 to high school. And so it doesn't seem to matter that much, right? Which actually surprised me. I actually thought that K8 was a good option initially that we should perhaps consider. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the format of the questionnaire. At the moment, you've got 1 status quo option and 3 non-status quo options. So if you just think of this as a vote, you're going to split the vote for change 3 ways, whereas you've just got the 1 status quo option. Since gravity tends to define that the status quo always wins, I wonder if that's the best way to form it. Maybe first of all ask, Are you open for change? Do you understand that there needs to be some kind of change? And then say, and if that's an option, then say, well, these are the potential ways we could change to deal with the financial challenges, but also some of the academic challenges that face the district.
So maybe I missed something, but what exactly is the survey going to look like? They're receiving a version of this, everyone receives this in the mail, and then there's questions?
Again, that meeting is not happening until next week with that group, how we work out with Qualtrics. We have to make sure that we can fit whatever it is into our format, and that's why we're saying those presentations. We're trying to see how we can make that sort of like mandatory reading before you can move on to looking at each of the options. Because, as the gentleman pointed out before, those are far more detailed than even these bullets that we put up here. You know, there's a lot more information that we've gone over. You've been at several of those presentations showing some of that detail. This was simply done just to show, for our purposes of these meetings next week, here's what the options look like right now. And if you go back to the website, you'll see the presentations we did with each one of these areas. So that's why we're trying to see how that would look like. And certainly, as Dr. McKinnon just pointed out, you know, how we would set it up about being open to any type of change first, to see if that's something the community is willing to look at.
Okay, yeah. So I do appreciate this kind of side by side. I think that's super helpful. And then I agree that the more information that we can include, the better. Because believe it or not, I still talk to parents who know nothing about this, despite all of your emails and despite Facebook and all the other things. And nobody, unfortunately, is going on the website. And even if they do, they're having trouble finding it. And it's just, so yes, absolutely. More information that can go out so people can really make an educated decision on what they want.
We even have to talk about sending out a mailer, like a card like we do with the budget, say, you're getting an email with this on there, please take a look at it. And we are going to be able to track, you know, how many parents, just like we did with COVID, so we get as many people's opinions and we don't get enough response. We're going to solicit again, like, we really need you to go in and look at this and provide us your opinion.
Yeah, and maybe it should be in the mail as well.
We could, it's just harder to do the statistical data with, you know, doing it in a hard paper copy.
Okay, so my other point was class sizes. Currently, my daughter's in Setauket School, in kindergarten, 17 kids in her class. I think they're all around 17, if I'm not mistaken. I personally think it's like an amazing class size. My mother taught kindergarten for her whole career in a district with huge class sizes, and it was a nightmare. First question is, what is the number of too small? Like, what does that mean? Like, you kind of mentioned this in the very first meeting, but I just want to go back there for a second.
Again, there are a lot of studies out there that gives you a lot of different information. Anything really below 15 has a law of diminishing returns. And the thing you have to be careful, in particular in Setauket, but we do have a cluster of our special needs students, the ratios in those classes. Again, if we exceed 50%, we get cited by the state for that, which means we then have to figure out how we're going to increase that. It is actually better to have more classes in a building, not saying that we should do the principal plan, but just going to have more classes where we have the ability to disperse populations of students and have those ratios broken down much better than it is to have smaller buildings with only a couple of options.
So with that said, with the Princeton plan, how many, let's say we're going to it next year, just hypothetically, how many students are going to be in the kindergarten class? You know, like, are we maintaining kind of this nice, like 17, 18, 20?
Right, if I could predict how many babies are coming in, I would be.
Well,
just to give you a sense of, last year there was about 340 some odd students in the kindergarten. We dropped to 320 this year. So it's been steadily going down by almost 2.5% every year. So using that number, we're going to be in the low, even lower than the 320 for next year, if the estimates are correct. And then it all depends on where they fall in. Remember, when you come into kindergarten, we do testing. So We test you if you're E&L, we test you if you're in special needs, we have a lot of different batteries, and that determines placement. So at the beginning, you may be zoned for Setauket, or you may be zoned for another school, but if you're an E&L child, you're going to Mount. And if you are a special needs child with high special needs, you may be going to Arrowhead or Setauket. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to your neighborhood school. This plan, and again, if you look back at the presentation, it says the Princeton plan we're putting into place, we wouldn't need to send any students outside of their home school. They would be clustered, they would be going on the same bus with all of their neighborhood kids, whether they're E&L, whether they're special education, whether they're general education, they would be going to the same school. That's that's one of the benefits of that.
Yeah, yeah. I guess my question is, what are the class sizes in the Princeton plan, as if it was tomorrow? Are we having more classes?
You wouldn't be increasing much more than we are right now.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
getting
you're gonna
at.
be in the same
So
range.
you're going to have more kindergarten classes with roughly, what, 17?
You would have less sections,
20.
but about the same sizes. Because again, like I said, in some schools, like Setauket is averaging about 17, and some schools you have 24 in that particular level. So it just matters how big the class is. You know, we have 88 in section, in class, and that's Setauket right now, so there's 4 sections running, so that's 22. But the way our averages work, the average for kindergarten is supposed to be 23. We're not even close to 23 in kindergarten in this district. Average for primary is supposed to be 25. That primary is 1st through 3rd. We're not even close to that either. So, and for intermediate, which is 4, 5, 6, we're supposed to be 26 in that. We're below 22 in those grade levels right now. So.
To me, that sounds high, but I'm not.
Yeah.
They sound high.
And again, it all depends, you know, you're coming from a person that taught in a parochial school and taught in the city of New York. My smallest class when I taught in a parochial school was 40. So, you know, we don't want to go to 40s. If that was the case, we reduced staffing half the staff in our district. We don't ever want to go to that. Plus, we want to be able to fit it. So that's the other thing. So we want to make sure that we don't go to that model and that capacity. But what we're experiencing a little bit right now is we just can't sustain the number of sections. We still have a number of staff here in our district this year that were put into place because of COVID and the spacing of COVID. It wasn't, the numbers aren't what they are because, we needed that number of sections. If we maintain COVID numbers, those COVID numbers are not sustainable. We just can't keep staffing levels at that level going forward and financially be able to be solvent in some capacity in the district.
And then one more question, which I guess is a part 2, depending on how this, ends up. But as far as repurposing a school, have we explored, I believe Port Jeff did this with the whole school in the village, renting the facility out? And is that a better cost savings than the tuition that we might get?
Right, that is something, again, by doing that, you're not putting staff in that building, our own staff.
Right.
Years ago, North Country was rented to BOCES.
Right.
Back when you were a student here. It was the BOCES Center. Back of the building was the administration building, in front of the building was the BOCES Center. It does offset revenue, but you have to be careful with BOCES because BOCES, they get subsidized. So we don't get a lot of assistance from that. So we think, could you rent it to a private company? That's something that the board would have to consider. Who would that be and what would their purpose be? It's sort of like the Nichols Road facility right now. People said, for years, let's get rid of the old administration building. We originally thought we were going to put the academy at the old administration building. Unfortunately, the New York State education law, actually the dormitory authority, the ceiling in the classroom has to be a minimum of 9 feet. The ceiling at the old admin building on Nichols Road is 7 feet. So we can't make it a school. So we'd have to raise the roof of the building to have students in it. Absolutely absurd, but that's so now we have that out with the Mesh Track program. We have the BOCES Textbook Center for private schools in that facility, which if we didn't have that, BOCES would have the right to come in and have a classroom in each one of our elementary schools. So by giving them the textbook center, we don't have a BOCES facility in any one of our schools. So that offsets that piece. And that's also where our security, our vehicle patrol goes out of for the security department out of that building.
I think everybody here, a lot of people here moved here for the school district, and the district performs very well. I think it's the top performing district in Subcommittee. I don't want to defend any other districts.
Well, let's not, I don't want to hear from the Harper Fields or the Half Hollow Hills superintendent tomorrow morning.
Sorry. There was a couple of points that were made, but I think I want to go over them again. One of the things I found is that most parents I've spoken to in the district are really not aware of what's going on. And I know this from making a point, just if I'm out at a kid's birthday party, I just asked a couple parents, so I'd see what their opinion is. And every one of them is like, what? I haven't heard anything about that.
And it's hysterical. I appreciate you saying that because I've gone to every PTA meeting, to every civics, Civics Chamber of Commerce. I've been around the district. It's like a Scanlon tour of Three Village going out there. And I'm so surprised to hear that. And we inundate social media with a lot of this information. So, but I believe it that there are people out there that haven't heard any of this. So it's kind of sad.
Now that you're going to send out another mailer, another email, I think one of the things was when I read the initial email and it said the strategic planning, that didn't really catch my eye. And I think one of the things to do would be to have a very short email that concisely laid out some of the changes that are being considered in, a couple hundred words, with a header that would get attention, something like restructuring the Three Village school system. If that's in bold in the header, I think you're more likely to get parents to go, what is this? And people are very busy, they have very busy lives, especially with kids, I'm sure you know that. And I think that header, together with something brief, they'll have the time to look at it, and then they'll know whether it's something, they'll know it's important enough to look into deeper. And as the survey goes out, you're going to want to get more responses than the number of people in this room times, all the different committees. So I think it's going to be important to write something that really grabs people's attention. Another point, again, I think it was previously made, is that there's research, I'm sure, for and against all of these proposals. And some of the studies that were done, that were mentioned before, the Duke study, I think you mentioned the Duke study. And there was a more recent study done in 2019. And the one in 2019 I'm referencing was the 573 public school systems in Virginia. And they looked at the impact on children moving, 6th grade children moving up to middle school. And they found that did have a significant negative impact. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be done, but if it is done, then we need to know what those negative impacts are and how we're going to address them. That transfer between schools, and I'm quoting, especially in adolescence, adversely affected their academic achievement. So I think transferring at different ages does have a different impact. Transferring before they reach a certain level of maturity, it can have an impact which needs to be considered.
And excuse me one second, and just remember that study that you're referencing from Virginia was done before COVID. So it wasn't done during, so to support a little bit of that statement of, 6th grade transition, we don't even know the impact of COVID yet. We're seeing it, but we don't know the full impact of that yet either. So that's another consideration when we look at any of these plans too. It couldn't be worse.
Is there, I know from speaking to parents as well, that some of these research reports have been given in, have been submitted, and is there a way to get them on your website?
They already are. Anything that has been submitted is on the website. If you go to the Parent and Community Resources and you click on the Strategic Planning Committee, each one of the subcommittees, whatever the person that sent it in, we've put whatever study it was right underneath that category for the entire community. We have not, anything that has been submitted, whether it's for or against anything we've done, has all been put up there. We haven't selected at all.
And you do have a single page, I think, with strategic planning. That page has a lot of the information on it. And it would be useful, obviously, to put that page in the email. So
Absolutely.
access to that. And, is there an email address on that page, so that if somebody wants to submit a report to one of the specific subcommittees?
Yes,
they can
there is.
email it in?
Yes, there's a link email on there as well, which we sent out 5 times. So,
Okay, great, thank you.
you're very welcome. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so it is 8 o'clock, we've been here for an hour. Anyone that, if you have any further suggestions, if you're at home and you're watching via the link, be happy to send anything to us as well. We're happy to read anything that's coming up. If you have any people that you've come in contact with that have said exactly what a few folks here said that they don't know anything about this, we're doing this one more time next Monday, same time, same location. Please encourage them to come. And if you can't make it, please watch it the live Zoom. Yes?
The final copy of the changes that are gonna be made to that before Monday, be ready for Monday?
Yes, yes. We're actually gonna probably have it done tomorrow and then post it up on the district website. Yes.
Is there another meeting after, like, is there anything else scheduled other than Monday?
The 23rd is the start time committee, and the governing committee itself is meeting on the 17th. And that's just all prior to the survey going out. Once the surveys are done and the data is put in, we'll convene meetings like this back to go over those results.
Nothing scheduled otherwise.
Nothing in between, no.
I'm not.
Okay? Thank you very much, folks, for coming in. I really appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank